This program is brought to you by the partners of A Rood Awakening International. Help others find truth. Support A Rood Awakening International today.
In the event of a financial collapse, your first priority is not having Bitcoin or gold or silver. It's knowing who your neighbors are. It's having skills you can trade. It's being mobile so you can escape at a moment's notice. Josh Tolley offers some outside-the-box thinking about what happens when traditional money is no longer viable. Because it's the end of the sixth day, the sun is set, and this is Shabbat Night Live. Well, Shabbat Shalom, Torah fans. Man, we got something for you tonight. Welcome to Shabbat Night Live with Michael Rood. Are you really prepared for financial collapse? It's a good question. And Josh Tolley has the answer tonight. It's the fourth and final episode of The Parable of the Talents. It's also the last opportunity to get this month's love gift with Josh Tolley called Business Ownership for Believers. I highly recommend watching this. It will change your life. Now, tonight's teaching is on the way, but first let's look at the astronomically and agriculturally corrected biblical Hebrew calendar. It is the third Shabbat of the 10th month, and my co-host tonight is the one and only Ted Clayton.
Well, thank you, Scott, and welcome everyone to the last Shabbat Night Live of 2023. And ladies and gentlemen, is it a great night for you to be here? Call your friends, call your family, call your neighbors, as Michael would say, because we've got 2 hours of great teaching with Josh Tolley tonight.
Yeah, it's like a Josh Tolley festival tonight. We got the fourth episode of The Parable of the Talents. Right. We've also got another special message from Josh right after that.
Right.
And also, it's the last opportunity to get this, Business Ownership for Believers. Guys, listen, I talked to Josh about this after I dropped him off when we did the episode here at the hotel.
Yeah.
And I said, look, Josh, is there a way I can get into this? We talked a little bit about it. And he's like, yeah, listen, people think that, well, to own a business, I've got to start a business, I've got to quit what I'm doing and buy a coffee shop and do this and do that and whatever. No. That's not what we're talking about. This is about using stuff you've already got, like the equity in your mortgage, what's in your 401k. And guess what? You don't have to take it out. And people say, wait, what? How does that work?
Yeah.
It's possible. It's how all the big international conglomerates do it. They buy businesses to increase wealth. And so this is a way to get your family ahead without having to stop what you're doing, to go in a completely different direction. You can if you want, but you don't have to. And you can use things that a lot of people have and they just didn't know that they could use to their advantage to really get their family ahead. This is really important.
And one of the things Josh talks about in this teaching, Scott, and I just absolutely, I was talking to you about it before we started taping here, and I said, I absolutely love this subject matter because, you know, I tend to prep a little bit myself.
As do I, yep.
And one of the things that you always see these commercials on television, you know, the only thing that you can trust is gold. And I sit back and go, you know, not necessarily the way it really is. I mean, yes, gold is going to be important. Yes, silver is going to be important. But what are you going to do? As Scott said a little while ago to me, you're going to just cut off a little piece of gold and give it to somebody? No, it's going to be about what you can barter with people. It's going to be goods and services and so forth. When the stuff hits the fan, as they say, right. It's going to be a different type of economy.
Right.
Totally. And that's what's so important about this teaching tonight is Josh and you go through some of the things that are going to happen with that. And it's going to be a great education for you, ladies and gentlemen. It is just going to be incredible. So don't miss it. You're going to want to really see this. But Scott, as you said, this is the last time people can get the love gift this month. So we've already talked about Josh's teaching, which by the way is fabulous, but tell us about the other things you can get this month for supporting the Rood Awakening.
So for a gift of $50 or more, it's the teaching.
Right.
For a gift of $100 or more, it is this beautiful pendant along with the teaching that depicts the menorah, the shofar, and the Torah scroll. And this is a replica of what was found it's from the 7th century. So it's a 7th century replica, a beautiful thing to have in the house, or wear it around your neck or whatever. This is a beautiful thing to have. But I think the pièce de résistance, if you will, is this thing we've got right here. We've got it plugged in so you can see it.
Yes.
It's, I am the light of the world, a quote from Yeshua, John 8:12.
Yes.
And this is something that does not exist anywhere. We had this specially made, you guys.
Yep.
Now, the lamp, yeah, you could probably get something that looks like the lamp, but you're not going to get the verse on it.
That's right.
This is something that our team created. They had it specially made because we wanted to give something special for Hanukkah, especially for the end of the year as well.
Yes.
Even if your friends are celebrating Christmas or whatever. I mean, you can show them this and they go, oh, that's a beautiful Christmas lamp. And you can go, well, no, actually I got it for Hanukkah, but even more than that, it's the light of the world. Then you can kind of go into the whole spiel about how, what you're celebrating is not even really about Yeshua. Let me tell you about when he was really born, and it opens up a whole thing where you can explain the truth.
Absolutely, Scott. Ladies and gentlemen, this is it. This is the last time you're going to be able to get this, and it is going to be gone after this love gift. It is gone. And ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to want to miss this. This is something absolutely gorgeous that you can put on your mantle. And it's just and as I said this 1,000 times, I know people get tired of me saying it, but it's a great conversation starter, just like you said.
It is.
And, it is just fabulous. But, Scott, before we move on, there's one thing I'd like to say just real quick. And ladies and gentlemen, that is thank you. Thank you for this year. Thank you for your support of Michael and A Rood Awakening International. We just, as part of the Rood crew, we just absolutely love you guys. And we just thank you so much from the bottom of our heart for your prayers and your sacrificial giving over the years. Giving is the most important. This is the most important time of year for giving for us, ladies and gentlemen, because it helps us get started for 2024. I cannot stress that enough. Without your giving now, we can't plan for 2024.
Yes, thank you, Ted. And actually, we have a special message from you as well that's coming up right here. So we'll play that in just a second here. We also have 2 hours with Josh Tolley, so wow, don't go anywhere. Josh Tolley offers some outside-the-box thinking about what happens when traditional money is no longer viable. It's the 4th and final episode of our series, The Parable of the Talents. Now, here's Ted.
Hello, dear friends and partners of A Rood Awakening International. I'm Ted Clayton. As the year comes to a close, we want to take a moment to express our deepest gratitude for your unwavering support and partnership with Michael and A Rood Awakening International. It's been a year filled with both challenges and blessings, and your commitment to our ministry has played a significant role in our continued growth and impact. Throughout the year, we have witnessed incredible transformations in the lives of countless individuals as they have come to understand the profound truths found in the Scriptures and the teachings of Yeshua Messiah. Your generous contributions have made it possible for us to reach a global audience and share the message of redemption, restoration, and reconciliation. In 2023, we achieved several milestones, including renewed outreach and humanitarian efforts. Your support has allowed us to extend our ministry's reach to those in need in the land of Israel. Through our partnerships and initiatives, we have been able to provide assistance and support to those who have been impacted by the brutal attacks of October 7th. We will continue, with your help, to provide the much-needed services. We created the first ever Spanish printed edition of the Chronological Gospels Bible. After intense translation and refining by our Spanish team, Michael's signature work is now in the hands of Spanish-speaking believers across the globe. We also set up a special fund to support shipping of the book to less fortunate countries, which can cost as much as the book itself. We held transformative in-house events. Our annual Passover and Yom Teruah event at Rood Awakening International headquarters in Charlotte brought together like-minded individuals to worship, study, and fellowship. These gatherings fostered a sense of community and a deeper understanding of our shared faith. We expanded our digital outreach. We have reached millions of people worldwide through our online resources, live-streamed events, and podcasts, helping believers connect with the roots of their faith and the timeless wisdom of the Bible. And of course, the second edition of the Chronological Gospels in English. The Chronological Gospels Bible is now better than ever, featuring larger print in both the regular and larger print versions, new, easier to navigate event index, new scripture index, new appendix of Hebrew names, words, and definitions, commentary updates, clarification and additions, timing updates in the book of the Revelation, and refinements to Hebrew word definitions. And soon, we'll be changing the Chinese-speaking world with the first ever printed version of the Chronological Gospels in Chinese. With the world changing so rapidly, we're striving to bring you the very best speakers on timely issues that affect us all, from end-time prophecy unfolding before our eyes to personal preparedness tips. We are producing more high-quality video teachings, articles, and publications than ever before to explore the messianic perspective on the Scriptures, deepening the understanding of YeHoVaH's Word. It's all very exciting, but none of this happens without you. We're eager to move forward and invite you to be a part of it. We ask that you prayerfully consider making an end-of-year gift to help us further our mission to reveal the truth of Messiah to the world and strengthen the faith of believers everywhere. Here are some of the ways you can contribute above and beyond your regular giving. How about a one-time donation? Your one-time gift, no matter the amount, will directly impact our ministry and outreach efforts. How about considering becoming an Ambassador Club member, providing consistent support that enables us to plan for long-term growth and sustainability? Or legacy giving. If you're interested in leaving a lasting legacy, please contact us to explore planned giving options that align with your values and financial goals. Your financial support is essential, but we also covet your prayers. We believe that prayer is a powerful tool and can open the doors, change lives, and accomplish the impossible. To make a donation or learn more about giving options, please visit our website at aroodawakening.tv/give or contact our partner services team at 888-766-3610. Or you can mail your donation to Rood Awakening International, P.O. Box 1559, Fort Mill, South Carolina. We are humbled and grateful for your dedication to the ministry of Rood Awakening International. Your partnership allows us to continue our mission of making the truth of the Messiah known to all the world. May the coming year bring you abundant blessings and joy, and may our shared journey in faith continue to grow and flourish. Thank you, and may God bless you and keep you.
Buying businesses is often perceived as something reserved for the worldly rich, but it's not true. In fact, it's not biblical, and it's more attainable than you think.
Small business ownership worldwide employ way more people than big corporations, have a much larger economic impact than large corporations. Not only do we need to understand that and appreciate it, but we got to get God's people owning them.
In Business Ownership for Believers, Josh Tolley shows you how to scale the acquisitional wealth strategy of multinational companies to something you can use right now. When you donate $50 to this ministry in December, we'll send you Business Ownership for Believers with Josh Tolley. Donate $100 and we'll send you Business Ownership for Believers plus a gold-plated replica pendant from the 7th century. Donate $300 and we'll send you the teaching, the pendant, and a frosted glass table lamp featuring Yeshua's words from John 8:12. Offer ends December 31st. Scan the QR code or call the number on your screen, or get your gifts online at monthlylovegift.com.
The traditions that we have in modern day Judaism remind us of what we did in the temple, and some of these traditions go back long before the temple in Jerusalem. It reminds us of when Melchizedek, the king of righteousness, brought forth bread and wine to Abraham when he came back from the slaughter of kings, and Melchizedek, the Melchizedek, the king of righteousness, blessed the Most High with the blessing that Abraham then taught to his son Isaac and then was passed down through the generations. Yeshua said, Abraham saw my day and he rejoiced. He gave a tenth of everything because he saw the broken body and the shed blood. Melchizedek, as Abraham and all of his offspring, then continue to say this prayer of sanctification. Baruch atah YeHoVaH, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, hamotzi lechem mi'haaretz. Blessed are you, YeHoVaH, our God, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. And Yeshua said, this bread represents my body, which will be broken for you. And this is what Yeshua said the last night that he was with his disciples. This represents his broken body that was broken for us. And then the blessing of the wine. Baruch atah YeHoVaH, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, borei peri hagafen. Blessed are you, YeHoVaH, our God, King of the universe, creator of the fruit of the vine. And Yeshua said, this is a renewed covenant, which will be paid for in my blood. As often as you do this in remembrance of me.
Michael Rood was right. At a certain point, the brimstone will hit the fan. So if it hits the fan, how are we to prepare for that? We've been seeing a few weeks of this with Josh Tolley. Welcome back, Josh. And now we want to get to when it all comes down and the brimstone hits the fan.
Yeah.
What do we need? What do we not need? And what do we, if cash is here, great. If it's not, great. I mean, how do we navigate this space?
So I love this topic because this topic is bigger to me than just what do we do with the money? And we're going to address that. So let's say we've done everything we can in the normal system, right? We've superpowered our employment if we're there. We've made a move into entrepreneurship, whatever. And we've stored some money, we produced some money. But let's say we still know it's going to hit the fan. Well, at that point, we have to start stocking up to get ready for, not the apocalypse, but ready for the market that comes next. And this is really, really key. If the world is destroyed, it doesn't matter what we prepared for. So we need to prepare for the second worst thing,
okay,
right? And in the second worst thing, we're going to have to rebuild a society. And in order to do that, we're going to need basics. So if it were me, not just if it were me, this is what we've done. And I said this pre-COVID and it ended up to be true. Stock up. Instead of buying like another box of ammunition, buy a box of diapers. Buy a box of non-perishable things that are going to be extremely important as soon as society collapses. But I want to take this a step further and talk about preparedness in general, because I think this is a topic that a lot of people are just not really prepared for. As you can imagine, in the faith world, there's a lot of preppers, right? And I speak at some of these conferences, and I see a lot of people who think, well, I'm just gonna bunker down in one spot. I'm gonna have a 30-30 with 4,000 rounds of ammunition, and me and my son are gonna be safe in the middle of the woods because that's what we did. No, you're not. Here's a little bit of a reality check. If you're not on the grid, do you know how I find you? I turn the grid off, and the only thing that's still lit up is you. You identified yourself.
Pretty simple.
It is pretty simple. Not only that, the key to surviving a catastrophe is not to stay put, it's to move and keep moving. A military base is a target. You don't want to be the military base. They know they're going to be targeted. Well, why would we do the same thing with our home? And we have this mentality of, well, I'm going to put shrubs here, and you should do whatever you can do. Got it, got it, got it. But if we're really talking about what hits the fan, we need to be ready to move. We need to be ready to do so with whoever we're going to be responsible for. You need a get home bag, a get out vehicle. The vehicle shouldn't be the same. Scott, this is such a huge topic. I talk to people who like, well, I have a get out bag. Great. Where's your vehicle? Right there. The Mercedes? The world's going to end and you think you're taking the Mercedes. Do you know who's a target for looting? You. Mm-hmm. Like, you should buy purposely an old truck that runs great, but nobody's going to want. You should have a boat, because if all the highways are shut down, you should have a path that you can navigate via water.
That's a good idea.
Well, that's my point. People don't think about actually prepping. They think about, oh, I'm scared. How do I hide in my house? That's a completely different model. When you go in and you take over a building or a territory or pillage a village, you do it with as few people as possible, light as possible, and as mobile as possible. And as possible, you're still going to take an ammunition, but a SEAL team doesn't come in with a battalion.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So you have to be ready to move, which means, yes, it's good to have some food in storage, but you should also have the ability to secure food if there isn't any. Yes, it's great to have ammunition, but you should be able to defend yourself if you run out. Yes, it's good. You have to be able to be mobile and prepared, not just physically, but financially as well. If you have the skill sets to be an entrepreneur and the world collapses, you can bounce right back to where you were in terms of security, feeding your family and all that sort of stuff, relatively quickly, compared to stockpiling a bunch of silver coins in the back bedroom.
Yeah, and silver coins and gold gets heavy as well.
Well, that's the point. It gets heavy. You have to move all this stuff.
Yeah.
You have to move it.
We need to take examples from the Israelites, number one.
Yep.
When the Spirit said go, the cloud moved, you moved.
You moved.
And so YeHoVaH is going to talk to us the same way. Look, get out of here now.
Yep.
Leave. I think we need to take examples from that. From the movie Defiance.
Sure, yeah.
Which what happened to the Jews when they just escaped to the woods.
Yep.
And they had to keep on the move. They never stayed in one camp for too long because the Nazis found out where they were.
Right.
They had to move again.
Right. And there's this process called becoming gray man, right? Gray man is you want to be able to blend in. And there's an element to that. Great, it's awesome to, live in the middle of the woods. I've done those courses. I've taught some of those courses. Yep, drop me off. I'm going to be fine. Yay. But it's hard to sustain that over time. Not only just physically, but psychologically. More likely, you're going to be in a place that you're going to want to be around people because it goes back to the needle in the haystack scenario. If we put a needle on this table, would it be easy to find? Of course. Well, that's you in the middle of the woods. You think you're hidden unless I have a thermal drone or anything that can spot you. You blend in, you don't blend in at all. However, if I need to really hide, I'm not running to the woods. I'm running to the city because I want to be around a million other things that look human. I want to be around a ton of infrastructure that I can be around and not throw up a signature. I want to be able to move in paths that are already developed that I don't leave a trail in because the path was already there before I got there. You see, so there's an entire process to that. And even to the communication side of things, like heaven forbid a earthquake happened right now in Charlotte. My family knows how to find me if there's no radio, no television, because we've already worked out a system. I'm not going to say it on air, but they know where I'm going to go. And they know what signal is going to be there to let them know that I'm either okay and alone, okay and with somebody, hurt and alone, hurt and with somebody. There's a coding system that we've developed that unless the CIA gets in my head, they can't break. So they know, hey, all I need to do is get to Charlotte, go to where Josh said he would go to, and see if that coding is there to tell if I'm okay.
Interesting. So, and that's quite opposite to what a lot of people say.
Oh gosh, right? Yes.
Because get out of the cities. That's the first thing you need to do. Well, so there's a point there too, though.
Depends on the emergency. Depends on what you're bugging out from, right? So let's say we are worried about a tsunami coming or an earthquake. Okay. Yep, I might want to get out. Let's say we're worried about China looking for bald people. I want to stay in. So it kind of depends on what you're trying to prepare for. And even getting out, you're going to have different scenarios. So like, for example, when I was living in Wisconsin, if a dirty bomb, because that's what they were talking about back then, if a dirty bomb goes off in Chicago and I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, do you know where I don't want to be 2.5 hours from now? In Madison, Wisconsin. Because millions of people are gonna go up the only interstate out of there that's gonna come right here. So I'm gonna want to go up and away from wherever the wind's gonna carry that fallout. Now, if it's an invasion, it could be a totally different route, a totally different system. But my overall point is you have to prepare to be mobile. You have to prepare for multiple contingencies, and you have to prepare what happens if everything doesn't go as your bug out plan went.
Okay, now so let's get on the topic of funding.
Oh yeah, money, that's right.
So if people, which you've been talking about for the last 3 weeks ad nauseum. So, what happens in that? Okay, so the dollars crashed or all this kind of stuff. Now, we've talked about this before, do we barter ourselves with cash? Do we do some kind of like, these gold dollar bills that now exist in several states? Is it privacy coins on the crypto market? Is it Bitcoin? Where do you think we land with this?
The first thing you're gonna wanna do, well, it depends on the disaster. You might not have a crypto anything. Like if it's an EMP, crypto went right out the window.
Yeah, that's true.
So it kind of depends.
Along with the Mercedes.
Along with the Mercedes. But your diesel-powered Volkswagen.
From 1983.
There you go. There you go. But again, it depends on the scenario. But if it's really that serious, the first thing you're going to want to do is start a new community. Because outside of what you're going to use as a currency, who are you going to use it with?
Right.
And if people are in this panic mode, look what happened during COVID. There were people who didn't come out for 2 years. We still haven't seen Richard Simmons since 2019, right? Like,
I haven't missed him, so I don't know.
But you have to say, okay, who's going to be in the community that I'm in? And that gives us our first clue. Are we really prepared? Do you know who your neighbors are? It's amazing how we know everything about Joe Biden or Donald Trump or whoever, but we know nothing about who lives 12 feet that way. Really? And are you monitoring your neighborhood? Who has a tall antenna? That's the ham radio operator. Who, is there a nurse? Start creating that community. Who does have bullets to protect you while you're sleeping? You can't do it alone. So create that community. And then we would next say, okay, well, what do we use as a trading mechanism? And it doesn't even have to be a currency. It can be time. I know out in Breckenridge, Colorado, they had, I think they were called mountain dollars or something, but it was an exchange of time for things. Well, all of a sudden we all have money then, don't we?
We do.
Yeah, so you don't need the paper, you don't need the coin, as long as you have time as a form of exchange.
Exchange time like for volunteering to help with something, or using your expertise that you had in your vocation, or
No, that's exactly it. So let's say you have skills as a nurse, and we have a tiny little community after the apocalypse. And you say, okay, I'm gonna volunteer my time to provide nursing care for those people who need it. And then in exchange, those people who need it pay you with the pizza that this guy can make, the turkey this guy owned, whatever. And we get back to a time is the medium of exchange. Because remember, initially we talked about money is only the medium that we measure the exchange in. It's not the exchange itself.
Right, so it just needs to be equitable, and that is your measure of how much is this versus that? What is it worth?
Correct.
So.
Yep.
Okay.
So that would be that next phase. And then at some point, you're gonna have a new system. Whether we like it or not, whatever's coming is coming. And we have to say, okay, well then how do I at least increase my odds of success in whatever this new system is? Even if later you have this wonderful plan to take it down, you still have to get in and use it to your advantage while it's there. And I tell people this all the time, any weapon used against you can be taken and used as a weapon for you. You just have to be able to take it away and use it. And that's true with money, it's true with the knife in my pocket, it's true with whatever. Right. Any weapon used against you can be taken and used as a weapon for you. So the other asset that you have is your ability to teach other people this stuff. If you are worried about, hey, what's gonna happen if Klaus does his craziness, then I would be sharing this teaching with everybody. So now there's a base of people who understand how the economy actually works and what they can do to survive in it.
And you're doing that by teaching people about finances and stuff like that. I do that with health, where I'm teaching folks enough I want them, like we do this whole several week teaching thing that I do with folks, so that by the end of that, they know how to keep themselves healthy, even if it all hits the fan, and they can teach other folks too, because I've made sure they've learned something in that time period.
Yeah, and even urban foraging. Like that's kind of a mix of both what we're talking about, health and money. If you knew how to urban forage and find food in a city, you don't think that's valuable to somebody who has a bed for you to sleep in?
Oh yeah.
Of course it is. But that's why it comes back to that larger point of, if you don't think you're a business person now, if you don't think you're a salesperson now, if you don't think that's for you now, don't whine about it, change. You have to be willing to change. And that is the biggest thing that is keeping most families in the situation they're in. Apocalypse or not, that's what's keeping most families stuck in the financial situation they're in.
And right now we have all kinds of freedoms where people can do this. If you know nothing about foraging and you figure, no one else in my group is a forager, I want to learn this. You can go on YouTube and become an expert in this.
Oh yeah.
Practice in your backyard. Now you can teach the rest of your group about this, and it didn't cost you a dime.
I tell people all the time, in the amount of time you waste surfing Instagram and TikTok while you're on the toilet, let's just be honest, a lot of people play with their phones. You could be doing a certification, and I'm not kidding. You could be doing a certification course in those 10 minutes, and over the course of 6 weeks, get a certification in urban survival or something, while at the same time somebody else is just scrolling, looking at cats jumping off a roof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a waste of time. We have to take advantage of things we have now. I think that's the thing, and the people are not realizing. And that's the whole thing we talked about before, where faith is taking action. Whereas, what did you say before? It was that comfort equals death.
Yeah. Comfort equals death. And that is true in every area of life. It's true in athletics, it's true in business, it's true in marriage. If you talk to anybody who gets, we just don't communicate anymore, or he doesn't try anymore, that's because comfort entered the marriage, and as soon as comfort's there, you're done.
Yep. And that goes with your neighbors too, comfort with your neighbors. So I have friends in our group that are former military.
Okay.
And they make a point of, when they move to a new area, invite the whole neighborhood over for a barbecue.
Yep.
Get to know them, who has what skills, who potentially is not on your side, and just take note of who lives where and who can you depend on in an emergency of any kind.
So here's a little funny story for you if we have time. I speak at a lot of things, and I was doing a gun rights advocacy speech, and there were protesters there, which is always fun. But this one protester, after we were done, had the humility to come up and tell me their story. And she was a female progressive lawyer, so you can just imagine, right? Female progressive lawyer. And she said, Josh, I hate to admit this, but I purchased a gun. I said, ooh, what happened? She said, I was joking around with my next door neighbor about how, food is getting expensive, supply chains, all that sort of stuff that everybody's been witnessing. And I said, and that's why I have a standalone freezer in the garage full of meat. And then I jokingly said, but it's not like, you'd come over and kill me for it. And when he didn't smile, I bought a gun. I'm like, exactly, because even getting to know people in your neighborhood, not only is it great for building relationships, but it's a pretty good intel tool too.
Yep.
Where you can start saying, okay, he's got a weakness there, she's got a vulnerability there, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and if you get to know your folks and have community, which we have also talked about in this series, now you have people that, even if you have a freezer full of meat, I know that I can trade you for that for what I've got.
Exactly.
And we don't have to kill each other for it because I have something you need. And now we have strength in numbers where we can all guard each other's skills and abilities and possessions against those who would come against us and kill us for the meat in the freezer.
Yeah, and what's great about that is you can always cover or disguise your preparedness with entrepreneurship too. I have a friend who got into the generator business after a massive catastrophe and started renting out generators as a business. And then if catastrophe actually happens again, he can donate those. But now he's got this revenue generating tool, work sites, new construction, whatever. He'll rent the generators out to make a living, But now he's got a ton of generators to save a community if he has to.
Yep.
So you can disguise preparedness inside entrepreneurship if you do it well.
Wow, okay, so this is a great topic. We're gonna come back and talk about more. But when the brimstone hits the fan with Josh Tolley, and thank you for joining us. Hope you're learning a lot. I am, and we're gonna talk about some more dicey stuff right after this. So thank you very much for donating to this ministry, because that's how this happens. So we're gonna give you a couple more minutes to do more of that, and we thank you in advance. We'll see you in a couple minutes. Thanks for supporting Shabbat Night Live. We're talking about what happens when the brimstone hits the fan, and it'd be sure nice to have the kids helping you out. So it's not just the parents doing everything. If the kids are old enough and able-bodied, they can help out with this kind of stuff, and we need to train them up right. So without scaring the kids, saying, okay, in the case of emergency, here's what happens, are there different ways that we can start educating our kids about this stuff? And is it maybe different than what we've traditionally learned, what we need to be teaching kids about?
Most kids have some sort of innate entrepreneurial element to them. It's us that stops them. And we can take that a little bit further. So the first thing is stop stopping them. But next is stop forcing them to share. This is so big when it comes to parents.
Stop forcing them to share. Wait a second.
Man, if you go to most homes in the Western culture, you're gonna hear, hey, Billy, share that fire truck with your sister. I don't want to. I said share. I don't want to. If you don't share, you're going on timeout, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
Stop it. You're creating little socialists. I noticed this phenomenon 2 presidential election cycles ago. I was speaking at some Christian churches, and when I got done, I would say, okay, are there any questions? And I would have some young 20-year-old get up and say, hey, Josh, can you explain to my parents how Yeshua was a socialist? I'm like, what? And then I'd go to another church, different state, same question. I'm like, wait. Why are we having an entire generation embracing socialism? It's the same reason why Bernie Sanders won 50 out of 50 states for the 30 and under vote. It's not Bernie's fault. It's ours who are raising these children, and it starts with sharing. If you take 2 kids who are fighting over the fire truck, and you, as the authority, AKA the government, says, hey, you need to give to the one without. I don't want to. Give it or I'm gonna take it. No, give it or I'm gonna punish you for not giving it. That's socialism. This kid grows up then and votes for the guy who says, hey, you give to the one without. I don't want to. Give it or I'm going to take it from you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it teaches this message of socialism. And Jesus didn't teach socialism. When Yeshua says, hey, give out of the abundance of your heart, he didn't say, hey, Peter, go into the next town, and if they don't give, punish them. If they don't give, chop another ear off. Giving is something you do out of your heart, not out of forced by an authority. So get rid of that. Replace it with trading. And they can be little. I have a 1-year-old who knows that if she wants to play with something that her sister has, she has to bring something to trade her sister.
Okay.
Nobody's forcing anybody. So now if her sister says, yeah, I'll trade the fire truck for the doll, great. But if the sister says, no, I still don't want to, then you as the government, as the authority, say it's a no and protect that decision. That's way more powerful, not only for your family, but also what the government's supposed to be doing anyway. The government's not supposed to be taking and giving. It's supposed to be providing the environment in which we can trade, and they just kind of keep the rules in place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So get rid of sharing, implement trading. The next thing you need to do is you need to get rid of time-based timeouts. No more, you're grounded for the weekend. Instead, say, hey, you're grounded until you earn, say, 500 family dollars. Now, family dollars, they earn them, they're fake money, it's not real, but they earn family dollars not by doing what their traditional chores are, but by doing extras. So let's say cleaning out the garage, not a normal chore, but let's say that's worth 100 family dollars. Cleaning the driveway for the widow next door, maybe that's 75 family dollars. But whatever it is, you come up with it for your family. The point is they get their freedom when they do whatever it takes to get it. Because to raise an entrepreneur, the number one objection I get from adults is, Josh, I don't know how to think like you do. Well, if you raise them this way, you wouldn't have that problem. Now when that kid says, Dad, I want to go to Billy's party this weekend, Bubba, I'm not keeping you here. You can get out whenever you want to get out. Now it's up to you to determine how much freedom is worth, what you're going to trade for that freedom, and the timeline you want to earn it. And that falls more in line of raise them in the way that they should go so they shall not depart from it, as opposed to simply like a jail sentence, sitting there until I tell you can come out. That doesn't teach them anything.
Right.
So,
well, and it's not unlike what, some of the prison systems are trying to do, where if, you get out for good behavior or whatever, but some guys are using their time wisely and they're getting a degree of some kind, a law degree or this, whatever. You got nothing but time. Yeah. So, wouldn't it be great if we could implement something like that in the prison system, that you get a shorter sentence if you earn a law degree, you get out sooner.
I would absolutely love that, especially for nonviolent crimes. We have such a messed up criminal justice system for nonviolent crimes. If somebody raped and killed somebody, totally different story. Yeah. Matter of fact, he probably shouldn't even be breathing. But if it's just some sort of other crime, we need to create a path to redemption. And even biblically, that's true. If you stole my sheep, we don't throw you in jail for 20 years. That doesn't benefit me at all. Instead, you have to do what? You have to work hard to replace my sheep and add to it.
Right.
Well, you can't do that if you're in a prison cell. So yeah, I completely agree. And I'm actually working on developing a system called Pick Up Your Crown for people who have been in prison for nonviolent stuff and come out and say, hey, what can we do now to elevate ourselves and be productive? Because just piggybacking on what you said, jail should not be this forever black mark that it is. But if you come out of prison, and let's say it's for something nonviolent, whatever, you crashed into somebody's house, whatever. If you go and apply for a job, you have to check that embarrassing little box on the job application. Do you know when you become an entrepreneur, that box doesn't even exist?
Right.
Entrepreneurship, it doesn't matter if you're from Yale or jail. And we should be teaching this in the prison systems. So that way when they get out, they don't have to choose between shame and maybe making, assistant manager at Wendy's, even though I'm 62, or committing crimes again. We offer them an alternative path that can actually be beneficial to society. And if it's a financially based crime, provides a vehicle to which they can actually repay their victims.
That makes a lot of sense. There was someone on this stage before who lived that very example. His name was Rodney Thompson.
Okay.
And he was out here and up here, and he told how, he was into drugs and all this type of thing, and he was dealing drugs, but someone gave him the chance to clean windows. And then he just messed up again, went to prison. But then when he got out, guess what he did? He created his own business, and he was able to be successful. Now he has a family, and he's helping other folks who are caught in the same trap.
Yep.
So,
and we need to do the same thing, since we're on the topic. We need to do the same thing for military once they get out too. You go from living a very organized, regimented, high level of expectation life to now even a good job, but even working a decent job with a millennial boss who doesn't have that same level of excellence in everything they do. Instead, let's train them how to be entrepreneurs when they get out and have a much more successful transition into civility.
We have a friend in our Shabbat gathering who does that very thing. He owns he got out and he out of the military.
Okay.
And he has a farm. But he did what he knew best in the military. Basically, he was into the military because, as a young man, he had committed a crime because someone was basically causing trouble for his sister.
Sure.
And he went a little overboard. And the judge said, he was a young man, you can either go to prison for the rest of your life or you can go to military. What do you want? So he chose military. And when he got out of the military, now he had some skills that he uses now on the farm. He opened a gun range on his farm. Cool. And he's been able to deal with folks like the EPA and all this and all these, unruly or neighbors who didn't like what he was doing. He's been able to learn the skills to deal with all of that, with the legalities and this and that. Very successful guy.
Yeah, and it's taking that skill set and, more importantly, the mindset to set a goal, to achieve it, to not be afraid of failure and do what you have to do in order to advance the family. And we need more of that. We need more, hey, don't choose jail, choose the military service. That'd be way more beneficial.
Right. So when things are about to hit the fan,
yes,
and people have a skill, and they haven't developed anything yet, what do you think is the first step they need to be doing in order to develop that skill quickly, to ramp it up so that they can now offer a service to other folks so they can get what they need?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it actually divides and shortly after you develop the skills. So once you develop whatever it is you're going to initially do for money, you want to quickly get out of that job as fast as you possibly can. You don't want to be an entrepreneur doing what you do longer than you have to. You want to say, okay, if I need to make a transition from employment to entrepreneurship, let me use the skill I have, but let me already pre-plan the exit out of here so I can then get into something larger where I don't have to be the one running the business. Going back to our analogy from the airplane, put your oxygen mask on first. Do you know what they also show you before you take off? How to get off of the airplane. So they also show you the exit.
Right.
And that's another big problem that entrepreneurs have, especially if they're starting a business doing something they know, like, or love. They have no predetermined exit for it. So start offering it as soon as you can. Start making money with it. Prove to yourself you can do it. You don't have to quit your job to become an entrepreneur. You can do both at the same time.
Right.
And then make that wonderful transition once one matches the other. Just say, bye job, and on to what you're doing. But develop the skill set it takes to be a business person, not just the skill set to do whatever that business is going to provide.
Right. So just, are you and tell me if I'm saying this right or not. So it's not developing another job for yourself. It's
right.
So being an entrepreneur is owning businesses.
Correct.
But not having to do it all yourself. Is that right?
Well, what I'm saying is, if you have to at first in order to get rid of the job, do it. But don't make that the plan. The plan should be, instead of, let's say you're a plumber, instead of honing your skills as a plumber and building a business around that, hone your skills around branding, marketing, the 4 types of marketing: advertising, capital strategy, brand management, all of the business skills, and realize you're going to become a business person, not a plumber. And business now becomes your profession, not plumbing. And as you do that, you're going to grow way faster. You're going to add to that business and to that income way faster than you ever could just being a good plumber. Being a good plumber, you cap yourself at your own time.
Right.
And maybe you hire another plumber, but now you add more time because now you have to manage him in addition to doing whatever you have to do. And then hopefully you muscle your way someday in 30 years. Well, now it's that same 30-year projection that the job lets you down with. You should be thinking to yourself, how do I not work in the businesses I own as fast as I possibly can? And the way you do that is you develop those skills as a business person, not as whatever the business does.
Okay, so we just have a few minutes left, but I want to circle back to something we talked about with community.
Yeah.
Now, there are certain people groups from different parts of the world who we see bring in their examples here of community. And maybe you can just give us a couple examples that we can maybe take a lesson from.
Absolutely, and you're absolutely right in the fact that people come here to do that. People don't come here to get a job. You can get a job in China. People don't come here to get a job. They can get a job in Russia. People come here for the very thing that Americans are taught to now hate, which is that entrepreneurial American dream. And you're right, which is why the #1 successful demographic in this country is no longer white people who look like me and you. It's people who come from India. And the #2 most successful demographic is not white people who look like me and you. It's people who come from Asia. And by the time you get to the traditional white old American guy, we're at like 4 or 5. Because these immigrants know, hey, I want to come into this land, and they have the opportunity for entrepreneurship. So let's talk about how they do it, because they don't just show up and it magically happens. A lot of these groups, let's just take the Indians, people from India for an example. They have what's called a chitty. A chitty. They have a system where in a neighborhood of Indians, let's say we all have to start out by being employed. That's just the way life is. We're at least eating, right? But every month we put $100 in the pot. Well, if there's 10 of us, that means that in a month we have $1,000. In 12 months, we have $12,000. $12,000 is enough for us to buy that first food cart. Now we do it again. Now next month or next year, we're going to buy you that convenience store. And as our wealth grows, it goes from 100 to 1,000 a month to 10,000 a month. And they have a system that's designed to say, okay, how many people in our group can we elevate to entrepreneurs and do it relatively quickly, not relying on their one independent sort of, I'm an American.
So do each one of them then own a piece of the business? That's sort of the unofficial model? Or?
Depends on how the chitty is set up. And that's where you can get really creative with this. You can form a group that owns the businesses collectively, or you can form a group that borrows the money to the individual members, and then as that member gets successful, it pays the group back. But there's multiple ways to set it up. Either way, it's advancing that cause way faster than what the typical American plan of I'm independent, I'm gonna do it my way, does.
And it prevents, or prevents you from having to go to a bank to get a loan. So basically, this is like community venture capitalism.
Absolutely, that's 9,000 years old, yes, yes. And look at how successful it is. This is not a ridicule, it's a hat off to them. The Indian community, the Patel family, or at least the Patel last name, owns like what, 65, 70% of all the hotels in the United States?
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Well, good for them in a sense. You know, you did what you're supposed to do. But there's nothing stopping everybody from doing this. Whether it's what we're going to talk about in the love gift offering teaching, which people should obviously watch, which is powerful, or it's just pooling together some friends and neighbors to say, hey, let's do something to at least make an effort to get out of what hasn't worked now for 3 generations.
Especially now, I'm thinking even of my own Shabbat group. So if you have a group that meets on Shabbat and it's full of Messianic folks who are preppers, this is possibly the greatest prep thing you could do.
Oh, yeah.
Why don't we do a chitty? Why don't we put all money in together? Every Shabbat group is filled with people with different skills.
Right.
You know, ours has. We've got a naturopath, who's me. We got a chiropractor. We got people who know how to do weapons. We know people how to do foraging. We have an herbalist. All these people. Why don't we all get together and then form our own little entrepreneurial group?
Absolutely, and I would say with that, have a lawyer and a business broker present to kind of form, because you don't want to create relationships.
People are people.
People are people. Absolutely true. But as an overall concept, absolutely, yes. And churches could do this, not just groups. Churches themselves could be doing this. And instead, we're talking about, oh, how do we raise $500 to give to the food pantry? If you would have taken every time your church has done that, we could have bought a grocery store and then just given the excess to the food pantry.
Yeah.
It's a totally different way.
So think bigger. Rather than, hey, I want to save up for the car, don't buy the car, buy the dealership.
Exactly.
I think Ted Clayton brought that up when we were talking about these episodes, right? That's the poor man's, Christian mentality. Oh, I just need a car. No, you don't just need a car. Work with YeHoVaH to get the right mindset to do the dealership and bless other people with cars, and you don't have to worry about it.
That's exactly it. And it ties back into a larger spiritual topic, and that's this idea that we talked about a couple episodes ago, which is the devil's only tool is convincing you one word means a different word. Because you're going to have a lot of people who say, yeah, but I don't need a lot of money. I'm not, selfish. That's greedy. And this is going to slap hard. I get it. But I'm slapping them. You're not, so don't worry. I'll get the hate mail. But greedy is not having a lot of money. Greedy is putting something of lesser importance above things of higher importance. You can be greedy with food. Obviously, I have been. You can be greedy with television, whatever. Mm-hmm. But when you look at what is greedy, it's not the guy who owns the car lot who gives a free car away every year to the single mom. Greedy is saying, I love my church, I love the kids' school, but I'm gonna move 5 hours away for $3 more an hour. That's greedy. It's not what we think it is. We should be thinking God could dump $1 billion in your lap. You reach out to heaven and say, God, it's not enough, send me another. Not because you wanna buy a jet, but because you know as well as I do, you're going to be giving money to other people too. And this is a great message to end on. Your success, ask anybody, if I gifted you $100 million, what would you do with it? None of them are going to say spend it on themselves. They're all going to say spend it on somebody else. All we're talking about is go out and actually do it now and not just hope the lottery gives it to you.
Right. Yep, and make the best of it and spread it around as much as you can.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Josh, thank you very much for being here for these 4 weeks. And we have the love gift as well that people can learn from. So make sure you get the love gift after seeing this series. A beautiful love gift. I think you're going to really enjoy what Josh has to say in there. Very empowering stuff. So make sure you get that. And thank you for your support of Shabbat Night Live. By getting the love gift, that's what you do. You support this ministry. So again, thanks very much for watching. And we will see you next week on Shabbat Night Live. Until then, Shavua Tov. Have a good week. Earlier this year, we had a pandemic hit, so to speak, something called COVID-19. Perhaps you've heard of it. Well, for a lot of people, their world went down through the floor, and it didn't have to be that way. And one person who knows that better than anyone is entrepreneur, author, business owner, investor, Josh Tolley. Welcome to Shabbat Night Live.
Hey, Scott, great being with you. How you doing?
Good, thank you. Good. I'm doing well. Everyone here at the ministry is doing well, thanks to partners who kept on giving through the pandemic. They saw the light by keeping to believe in those things and to donate to those things which they believed in. And some people did not take the right path. We talked about giving last year. Before any of this happened. And I think there's kind of an I told you so in there. If people had only listened to you last time, I wonder if we could reiterate that for folks who are saying, how could I have avoided this? What did I do wrong? So for those who
whose life went through the floor. What did they not do right?
So, it's interesting. As we circle back on a year since the last time I joined you, a lot of I told you so's kind of happened. But one of those things is, God tells us from Genesis to Revelation, we're supposed to be entrepreneurs. That is his model of securing capital. And people tell me all the time, oh, well, Josh, God provides. He provides for me like he does the sparrow. Absolutely true. But God doesn't provide to the sparrow where the sparrow can just sit in his nest and then poof, bird feed shows up in his gut. He still has to go out and get what God provided. Well, entrepreneurship is that same model. And that's what God has given us from Genesis to Revelation as a way believers are supposed to secure their family income. And when we were together last time, we were talking about that. We were talking about how to be an evangelpreneur, how to walk that out with faith. And one of the benefits when we addressed that topic was that you're never caught off guard. You're never surprised by what's going to happen because there's this myth that there's nothing more secure than your job. I hear this a lot, Scott, where people are like, oh, I'd love to start a business, but I need to put food on the table and a roof over my head. So I have to have a job. Well, what COVID taught us was there's nothing less secure than a job. Jobs lasted about 4.5 minutes. And then everybody was getting laid off. We hit up over 50 million unemployed people. We also realized that money that we thought was going to be worth something, whether it was equity in our home or our 401ks or anything that the experts taught us was secure, really wasn't, which we also talked about and I put in the book. And it's so sad. And we shouldn't make light of it because it is sad. But it's so sad how many millions of people were making money, saving money, and keeping money the way of the world. And then this happened. And they said, well, why did it happen to us? Why wouldn't you think it happened to you? And God's way was saying, okay, this is how you make money. And then once you make it, this is how you're a good steward with it. And those people were not caught off guard. Those are the people that kept your ministry afloat. Those are the sort of people who, like myself, actually have businesses that are booming during COVID. So there's this I guess, contrast happening in the world right now. And everybody saw what the world said to do with money. And then, did it really work? And it didn't. I remember we had this guy call up. He had $400,000 in equity in his home, paid up equity. He still owed on the house. But he goes to the bank and says, hey, I need $20,000 to kind of help my family get through. And he's thinking, well, my parents taught me there's nothing smarter than buying a home. You build equity, right? And he goes to the bank to get the 20 grand and they looked at him and go, no. Well, why not? It's paid up equity because you lost your job. And we don't understand that in the world's financial system, it is so fragile. Forget about how big the number is or how many commas are in it. When you operate financially in the world system, the entire thing is fragile. And that's what a lot of people realize.
Now, what are some things? So obviously there are some success stories in this too, where not everybody's life went through the floor. As you said, your businesses are booming. Now, because a pandemic like this or a stock market crash or anything like that, all it is a transfer of wealth from one person to another. The money did not go anywhere. It's like matter. There's only a certain amount of matter. It can be or energy can be transformed from one form to another. So what have you seen, maybe an example or two of some businesses that actually boomed during this time?
Sure. So we happen to own a clinic. We sold the business in the clinic. I used to own the clinic and the business inside. We sold the business inside, but we still own the clinic. And that business has boomed because a lot of people that were trusting the big medical healthcare systems all of a sudden realized, well, wait a second, that's where the viruses are. I don't want to go where all the people with COVID are. So private clinics actually started just exploding. So you have that. You're also getting a lot of smaller retailers starting to boom again because people are getting sick and tired of shopping online. Shopping online was cool when it was an option. Then when you had to do it, all of a sudden going to the local store that's still open, owned by a local person, actually had some additional value to it. So those are booming. People who offer services in person. I know a lady who's starting to do field trips for homeschool kids because a lot of kids are now homeschooled. One of the biggest parts of being in school when you were in public school was field trips. That's where you made some of the best friends and got a lot of experiences. Well, you don't get that with homeschool. So she started a field trip for homeschoolers company, just exploding. So there's a lot of opportunity. And there's always a million ways to make $1 million, and you have to be prepared to look for that opportunity. But at the same time, you also have to secure that capital. It's all about the dry powder, right? In the markets, they say you have to keep that dry powder. Well, you have the income stream and the dry powder. And if you can control both of those the way God told you to, then you're in a position, no matter what comes, you're able to take advantage of those opportunities.
So let's say you're in the position of that person who had $400,000 of equity in his house, and he didn't have a job. What can a person in that position do? Can they take some equity out of their house and start a business, or what would you recommend someone do in that case?
So in that sort of situation, whenever you're using a bank for your lending device, you're always going to be at the will of the bank. And that's a bad position to be in. Bob Hope has this famous quote that says, a bank will gladly lend you money as soon as you can prove to them you don't need it. And unfortunately, that is really, really true. So what I'm telling people is start something entrepreneurial right now. Start something. It doesn't have to be your main source of income. And it's not about Ferraris and jets. It's about having something that's not dependent on the system. So now, even if it's $500, $600 a month, you have a little bit of an engine. You can always add fuel to that and grow it. And then with the capital you have, start asking yourself, well, wait a second, if I'm going to be a good steward of the money that is coming in, what does that mean? And when we look at the parable that Jesus tells, where the dude who buries it, and Jesus didn't use the word dude, I'm paraphrasing, but the dude who buries it, what happens to that guy? He gets punished. He doesn't just get it taken away, he gets punished. Well, when we look at what we're doing with our money today, a lot of us are burying it in the bank. That's a very dangerous place to bury it. That's what the Bible actually calls a money changer. The other place we bury it is in some sort of Wall Street-based product that's so vulnerable. It literally, Scott, goes up and down by the second. It's a little ticker on the bottom of your screen. Well, you wouldn't let a 5-year-old keep the important money that way. And I'm not saying that those two entities are bad, but it's just not the best stewardship. Now, if you have extra money and you want to play the market, go for it. But again, 401ks prove this all right, because what did the government have to do with 401ks? Waive all the fees associated with them, because people realized, wow, this really isn't a liquid asset that I could ever count on. So right now, the government's waiving fees for you to take your 401k out, because most people realized, that was kind of a ripoff more than an asset.
So what are some liquid places where people could put their money and be a good steward instead of putting it in the bank? Because even Yeshua says, at least put it in the bank where it could gain some interest. But obviously these days, there's not a lot of interest to be had. So what do you do? Where do you put it? Where do you invest it?
That's a great observation. So the bank right now isn't giving you interest. Wouldn't it be nice if we had the banks that even Jesus had? Right now, the bank is lending out your money. They're going to make 5, 10, 14%, depending on what they're lending out to. And they're going to pay you 0.025 if you're lucky. Excuse me. And then if you're lucky, they're going to say, okay, well, we'll let you put it in a secured account, right? A CD or something that has FDIC insurance. What we need to realize when it comes to banks is, first, they own the money. As soon as you deposit money in the bank, it legally becomes property to the bank. That means you are now a creditor to the bank. That doesn't seem like a very good steward. So when you're looking at options, option one is to keep it in something that's liquid. So metals can be kind of liquid. I have a teaching on, how valuable is your gold really, but metal's kind of liquid. You can place it into a business of your own. This is something that people don't think of as an investment, but they really should. If you're going to deposit $5,000 into your Roth IRA or something, why not put $5,000 into your own business? If that thing makes $50, you're now beating the bank. If it makes $500, you're now beating the market. And people don't think that way. The other place you can place money that people just fail to realize is you can place money, if you have a right vehicle, through an insurance vehicle that allows it to stay liquid. And it also protects it against any back loss as you gain compounded interest. So you do have options. Just most people aren't educated on them. They think bank, stock market.
And it's funny, we mentioned before entrepreneurship. So I see a lot of this happening, especially lately, where people are becoming coaches. Coaches of anything. If you know something, you've lost your job, and you say, gee, you know what? I was a CEO for 20 years, and all of a sudden I lost my job due to COVID. I know a lot about running a business. Perhaps I should become a business coach to teach others about how to run a business properly, or a health coach, or this or that. Or if you have any kind of knowledge, it seems like you can make money being a coach. And I wonder how many people have actually thought about that.
Well, it turns out millions of them have. So this is an industry that really needs a little bit of policing. And I want to make sure that the people who are coaches out there who actually know what they're doing get the credit they deserve. Part of the blessing and the curse of the internet is anybody can say they are anything they want to be. So on the opposite side of that, you also have programs for the right amount of money, Scott. That book about all that wonderful information can have your name on it. Or for the right amount of money, Scott, they can develop a program for you, and now you're just the coach. So you really have to be careful with that. But with that being said, if you do have a skill, a real skill that people are wanting, that is an instant business. It just is. I mean, and we've known this for a long time. When you look at people in how they've come out of the Great Depression, well, my grandma taught piano to 2 kids in the neighborhood. That helped. 2 kids. Yeah, think about it. If you had 2 people paying you $20 a month each, well, that's $40 a week. That's $160 a month. That's now food for somebody in the family, and it didn't take anything to get that started. There are so many ways that we can make money without money. It's not even fun.
You just rhymed right there. I don't know if you realize that.
Next I'll try to be punny.
So now, we appreciate you coming on Shabbat Night Live. You are doing this out of your own time. And so I want to thank you, first of all, for coming on. And secondly, you teach people how to start their own business. And, you know, you have something called Purple Monkey Garage. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what that's all about, and what, if people are thinking about starting their own business and saying, yay, you know what? Josh is right. I need to do this, but I haven't the faintest clue how to get started. Can Purple Monkey, your business, help them do that?
Yeah, it can, actually. PurpleMonkeyGarage.com, PurpleMonkeyUniversity.com. I also wrote a book on it called Entrepreneurial. And it comes down to this. Every family should have some element of entrepreneurship, because that's the one that's between you and God. When you're counting on your money between you and your boss, well, now it's not even a question of, is that good stewardship? Now you have to start asking yourself, are you equally yoked? So we help people through that entire process. And through our parent company, Shift Capital, we actually make a point of wealth education, wealth creation, and wealth protection. Because one of them, without the other two, becomes unbalanced, and you see that spin out of control too. How many millionaires have we seen end up poor or blow the money or not know how to get it back? So we really focus on wealth education, wealth creation, and wealth protection.
Okay, that's excellent stuff to know. So now we're going to get into giving a little bit, because that is also a good part of stewardship, being good with your money. Because if you're not, if you're just giving, or pardon me, if you're just working to get and keeping it all, well, that's not good stewardship either. So what is the importance of giving, just from a practical standpoint?
Well, there's a reality to it. There's a godly reality to it. Some of the biggest, I think, people who most people would consider bad guys gave a lot, because this is what I hear all the time. Well, why are they prospering? They're evil. Why are they prospering? They're in the mafia. Why are they prospering? Because they're still giving. It's like the law of gravity. You know, Al Capone set up the first soup kitchen in Chicago. He also set up the first charity to give clothes to wounded veterans. And Al Capone prospered. I mean, obviously, don't be like Al Capone, but there's a reality to that. You have the Rockefeller family, who a lot of people don't agree with. But what was one of the key things that JD himself said you have to do more than make money? You have to give money. So even when he was broke, he was giving 10% of the broke amount that he had. There's a reality. The other thing it does is it lifts you up too, Scott. And this is one of the things that I wish more people would talk about when it comes to giving. When you're down in the dumps, when you're feeling so broke that you can't give, you're feeling defeated. Excuse me. You're feeling defeated. And that defeated feeling tends to cascade. then you take it out on your spouse or your kids, or if you do have a job or you're looking for a job, it makes you less productive. But when you give, it lifts you up. It just lifts you up. We did this yesterday. I had somebody in the car with me as we went through a drive-thru. And I said, have you ever done the thing where you pay for the person behind you? And they said, no, I've never done that. And I said, watch. And we told the young guy in the window, hey, I want to pay for the person behind me. And it was so crazy how that uplifted. It was only like $12, but it was so amazing how that uplifted everybody's spirits for the rest of the day. That little tiny act. So when you give, it actually helps build yourself up too, because it reinstills this idea that hope exists because you just gave it to somebody else. It's like a mirror. And then there's just this idea of good stewardship. If you're making money and you can bless other people with it, or you're making food and you can bless other people with it, or you have an extra blanket or you can bless somebody with it, you're doing what God's calling you to do. God never called us just to observe. He called us to observe, listen, and do, right? Read and do. What good does it to just be a reader of the word and not a doer of the word? So he tells us, okay, go out and do it. And when you do what God wants you to do, you are going to get a benefit, even if it's just making God happy. And if you're telling yourself you love God, then making him happy should be enough of a reason to do it in the first place. But what I find interesting is the Bible, which supposedly everybody believes, right? It tells you time and time and time to give. We can have an argument about, was tithing done away with? Irrelevant, because you're still supposed to give. Old Testament, New Testament, pre-death and resurrection, post-death and resurrection, you're supposed to give. So start giving and see how wonderful that makes you feel. And oddly enough, it's almost like he being God kind of blesses you in little ways, where as soon as you give, you get this little bitty, what my wife calls a God wink. You just get a little wink. And it doesn't mean, you give $10 and 1,000 falls out of the sky, but it could mean you give $10 and you find your lost keys that you couldn't find. Or, just these little tiny things start happening. And it's a wonderful thing to watch.
Indeed. I find the same thing with health. People say, well, how come people, even atheists who are in the hospital with cancer, can believe enough that they will be healed of this, not even believing in God, just believing that their body will heal it, and it happens, and they get healed. And Christians are baffled by this. How can this happen? They didn't even believe in God. It's because God has built this into every human being. Whether we choose to use it or not and recognize where it came from, well, that's up to you. But he's built it into each of us. And same thing with giving. It's like you said, with the Rockefellers or whomever, or Donald Trump, who stopped by and helped somebody who had a flat tire or something like this, and nobody ever gives him credit for that. All these type of things. If we give, we will receive, because it is a biblical principle, and they are universal, not whether or not you have accepted Christ. I mean, it's just a thing. So if you're enjoying this talk that we're having with Josh Tolley, stay tuned. We have a lot more coming up in just a second. But first of all, we've been talking about giving, and now is your opportunity. If anything Josh here has said has resonated with you, we would certainly appreciate you supporting Shabbat Night Live, because it costs a lot of money to put on Shabbat Night Live and to bring this to you. And we certainly appreciate your support. We just love how you supported Shabbat Night Live all through the year, and we appreciate Josh coming on with us this year. And so we just ask that you would consider that in your heart, and we'll give you a couple minutes to think about that. And thank you for your support of Shabbat Night Live. As we reach the end of the year here, the end of the calendar year, we really appreciate your support. It's when we can plan for the next year. I need to tell you a little story about my son. He's 17 years old. He's blown through a couple of rental investment books. He loves to play a few stocks on the Robinhood app on the phone. He loves to sell watches online. He likes to buy watches and fix them and flip them and put them back on eBay. And he's frustrated because he's only 17 and he wants so badly to establish his own limited liability company, corporation, but he can't because he's 17. Now, Josh, I think that's probably your quintessential definition of an entrepreneur, just aching to bust out and do something.
That is exactly how it's supposed to be. I remember I was 12 years old and I was already making more money than some of my teachers. You know, it's really what God makes us to be. And this is what's really interesting about this, Scott. People ask me all the time, you know, well, are we all supposed to be entrepreneurs? I mean, can't some of us be employees? You can do whatever you want, but God designs every kid to be an entrepreneur. I've been all around the world, spoken to all different sort of racial backgrounds, religious, ethnic, income brackets. And if you look at children, all of them are entrepreneurs. All of them. Sally will have a fruit roll-up. Billy will have a Twinkie. They'll trade. They are born to be entrepreneurs. We're the ones that stop it. We're the ones that say, stop doing that. Don't trade your apple or whatever. And then we teach them to be employees. We have now created a culture that is just solely focused on go to school, get good grades, go to college, get more good grades, and go get a job. And this is supposed to be the answer to life. And statistically, there's nothing riskier. There's nothing riskier. And what's funny is when I was a when I was a teenager, they used to run these television ads that say, you know, well, if you have a college degree, it means more than $1 million more earnings in your life than if you don't. They got rid of those ads because they realized they were lying to people. Your odds of becoming a millionaire are actually higher if you have a 2.75 GPA or lower. And there's a real reason for this because there's this quintessential expression, A students work for B students are managed by C students, and D students own the company. That is statistically true.
You told us that last year. I remember this.
It is, and it's true. When you look at the Forbes 400, number 1, number 2, number 5, number 7 dropped out of school. Like there's a reality. And I'm not telling kids who are watching this drop out of school, but what I'm saying is we have to stop squashing that entrepreneurial drive that kids naturally have. Matter of fact, hold on one second. I'll get you proof. I'm in my television studio, and on our shelf I have a book from 1929. It's fragile. It's almost 100 years old, but it's a textbook. And this is for 7th graders. We were teaching people in 7th grade, unless you're the dunce in the corner who's going to go be an employee, you're going to go start a business. And the first chapter is paying your laborers. I could teach an MBA level business course out of what we taught 7th graders in 1929.
Wow.
We have come a long way in a bad direction because now it's all about repetition, regurgitating answers in order to get them employed.
Wow, that is incredible. So kids are meant to be entrepreneurs. And my kid is homeschooled. He's been homeschooled his whole life. He's in 11th grade now. And I think probably that's why he is the entrepreneur. He sees there's a different way. As all his buddies at school have been doing one thing, he can do another and will be supported for it because we see that in him. So if someone has a child in regular school, how do we raise a kid who can be an entrepreneur?
Great question. So there's a few things we can do, and it's all age dependent, of course. But one of the first things we need to do is stop giving timeouts based on time and give punishment based on what I call family dollars. When you're telling a child you're on timeout for a day, an hour, whatever, you're grounded for a week, what they're learning is freedom comes with time served. That's what employment is. That's literally, when I'm turned 65, right? So instead, change that modality in their mind and say, okay, you're on timeout or you're grounded until you earn 500 family dollars. Now, 500 family dollars can be things like you get 70 of them for cleaning out the garage. You get 100 of them for mowing the widow's lawn next door, whatever it is. But now they are deciding how much is freedom worth. They're deciding how bad do they want it. And they're creatively thinking, okay, what am I willing to do to get this? And it takes that idea of, well, I hate you. You're not letting me go to Billy's pool party. It's not me, Jack. It's you. You could have been out an hour ago. But that's one thing that I really love. The second thing that I really love when it comes to raising children is stop giving them an allowance for things that you don't get paid to do around the house either. So stop with this, oh, mom gets paid on Friday, I get paid. If a child's going to make money in a home, then you have to teach them to make money through entrepreneurship. So when they're 6 years old, that might be a lemonade stand. When they're 16, that might be a car detailing company, whatever it happens to be. But there's a few keys to this. They don't do any business longer than 6 months. You're not trying to create the Donald Trump of lemonade. In addition to that, tax them. Because what was one of the biggest shocks when you got your first paycheck, right? You're like $5 an hour, 20 hours, that's $100, 65.42. Where'd the other money go? Taxes. So they switch businesses every 6 months and then you tax them. Now, don't spend that tax money on a new fedora on yourself. Save it for a fund for them or something. But get them used to how the system works. What this will create is a solution to the biggest problem that I face in my business. I have thousands of adults who are going, Josh, I can't think of any business that I can do because you weren't taught to think of businesses. I have started businesses between exits on the highway. I have started businesses with no money in Florida on YouTube, pretending we're homeless and by lunch made 40 grand. It's not a business problem. It's a how we think problem. So when you teach your kid to start a new business every 6 months for 12 years, that's 24 businesses. I could take that child, drop him off in Singapore with $50, come back a year later, and he'll be middle class. So that's part of that idea of raising those entrepreneurs. And in addition, take them with you on your entrepreneurial journey. That's one of the biggest distinctions between people who are born in America and people who come to America. People who come to America come to be entrepreneurs. The people who are already here, even if we do try it, it's something we do outside of our family time, so the kids never really see it, which is why traditional American businesses now will never make it past the second generation, whereas 1 in 7 people from India are millionaires in America.
I see that because we have something at home. We do a little bit of a health thing on the side called Layered Wellness at lairdwellness.com. And we run a Facebook Live every Tuesday night. Well, while my wife and I are hosting it, my son came to us with his entrepreneurial spirit and said, hey, you guys need someone to manage your chat while you guys are on because you can't be looking at the chat while you're on. So why don't you let me field the questions for you? I thought, that is a brilliant idea. Why don't you? So he sits in the room next to us and manages the chat for us and then refers any questions to us later. But that's how he's seen exactly what you're talking about. He's seen us take on our entrepreneurial spirit, and he wants to join in and do it. And he's also done this. I wonder if this is advisable, if you advise people to do this. He took a look around our house and said, what do mom and dad own that just sits there that I could be making money with? We recently acquired a pressure washing machine. He noticed there was a lot of dirty driveways in the neighborhood. And he knows that if you're going to pressure wash somebody's house, well, somebody's going to be pretty sensitive about that. But their driveway, they'll probably let a kid do that. So he is now starting a driveway pressure washing business at 25 cents a square foot. And so that's what he saw. Mom and dad have a possession I can make money with. Is that something you would encourage other kids to do?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. Yeah, and I'll even give kids another one. Go to the dollar store, get a stencil set with numbers on it, and go through a neighborhood and get a $1 spray can of paint and say, look, nobody can see your number on your house. When the pizza guys come in, the Uber, the DoorDash, whoever, how many times do people pass your house? All the time. Well, for $10, I'll spray paint your number on the curb so people can find you. You could make $1,000 going down one side of the street. So there's so many ways to make money. That's a great example, Scott. There's so many ways to make money. And I think one of the things we need to get back to is encouraging our children to think that way. And again, rewarding it. I remember I was on the air when Steve Jobs died. And this lady calls into my show and she's like, well, we need more Steve Jobs whatever the plural of that is. And I'm like, well, wait a second. Wait, do you really believe that? Because if your son or daughter called you and said, Mom, I'm dropping out of school, you'd have a heart attack. And then if your son or daughter said, oh, no, by the way, I'm starting a business, you'd be resurrected just to have another heart attack. Don't tell me you want people to do what Steve Jobs did when you're telling your kids don't do it. And we need to get back to that place where we realize entrepreneurship is what God tells us to do from Genesis to Revelation.
Now, seeing mom and dad run a business is one way kids can learn, but they also need to learn from mom and dad giving, right? And that's another reason why we need to give consistently, especially at the end of the year. This is when ministries are looking forward to planning for the year, to decide what they can and cannot do. And when mom and dad give an extra amount over and above, I mean, that teaches a valuable lesson as well, doesn't it? Just like the tax situation you were talking about.
Well, and get them involved in the giving. I just gave a presentation not too long ago to a group of family offices. So we're talking pretty wealthy people. But the concept was, how do we get our children to be as philanthropic as we are? And the whole seminar was kind of similar to this. And I said, look, you have to get them involved in the giving itself. Let me paint an illustration. Who are some of the naughtiest kids in school? Preacher kids. We call them PKs for a reason. And it ties back into your giving, I promise. But watch how this works. When a preacher kid is growing up, he hears from his mom and dad, stay here, Billy. Mom and dad have to go to the board meeting. Stay here, Billy. Mom and dad have to go pray at the hospital. Stay here, Billy. Mom and dad have to do whatever, right? He's not involved. Who are some of the wellest behaved children? Missionary kids. Same industry, but what's the difference? Come on, Billy, we got to go pray for the homeless. Come on, Billy, we got to go feed the disaster relief. Come on, Billy. So by getting them involved, you have families that are 5th, 6th, 7th generational missionary families. Whereas when you're not getting them involved, you have preacher kids who are knocked up doing heroin by the time they're 15, right? So the same thing is true with the giving. If you get them involved in the giving, remember that tax money I had you take from them? What if that was their giving fund? Who do they give to? Why do they give to it? Make them deliver the check or give the cash if it's applicable. Even when they're little, obviously give to great ministries like this one. But even if it's $5 to a homeless person, let the little 6-year-old give the money and watch that little 6-year-old get addicted to giving.
You know, that's totally true, because I remember when I had a situation here at a Rood Awakening where when I was still working on a visa here from Canada, I now have my green card, but when I was working on a visa, there was a mix-up and a misunderstanding with immigration. And the long story short was, I was not able to get paid for 9 weeks. So I knew what that was like, not getting paid, and that was the scariest thing. And all of a sudden, I looked at the guy on the side of the road thinking, I know how he feels now, and I'm going to be a lot more philanthropic to him. And our kids saw us go through that. And ever since then, we now keep money in the glove box, just in case we see somebody on the side of the road. And quite often, I know a couple of years ago, I remember our son stopped us and said, Dad, stop here. And we're like, why? He says, there's a guy on the side of the road. Can I give some money to him? And he knew that there was money in the glove box, and it was almost, he felt it's his obligation to give that to that person. Now, 10%. Do we give more? Do we give less? What does the Bible say? What do you think? What's your opinion on this?
Man alive, that is a theological hot button, because I kind of alluded to it before. You have some people say, oh, well, you don't have to give the 10%, and we're not an agricultural society anymore, and it was talking about wheat. I'm going to leave that to people like Michael Rood and those to kind of argue and figure out. But what I do know is you should be giving, and you can't outgive God. And I'm not one of the, if you give 1,000, he's going to give you 1,000,000. No, that's not how. Everybody doesn't get their best life now. Sorry. But I will tell you that if you give, it's a good thing. It is a good thing to give. And my own personal story, whenever I was the most down and out, because it's not like I was born wealthy. I was homeless for a while. But when I was in my most down and out, even through simple little acts of giving, obviously giving at church, but maybe, tipping as much as the bill was when I saw a waitress who was kind of, not doing too well financially. It was amazing how something always happened for me. It's even with my books. I was in this situation where I was giving and I didn't really feel like it, because God is that way sometimes. And I didn't want anything from it. I wanted to stay anonymous, all that sort of stuff. And God was just pushing me to give. So I did, and I tried to remain anonymous. And this was right when my book of Entrepreneurial came out. And somebody who found out I gave wanted to thank me. And I said, no, you don't have to thank me. And it went back and forth. But it turns out that he was a pastor of a massive church that now buys Entrepreneur books by the case and gives to everybody. So there's just this way that it just seems to come back.
It does.
If you are really watching this and you're thinking, well, I hate these giving messages. Should I really give? That's a clue that you should. Nobody who's giving enough goes, man, I really hate giving. That's a clue. It's kind of like, let's be honest, you're probably in better shape than I am. I've hit the drive-thru. I already admitted it, right? I feel worse going through the health food store, right, than somebody who's already healthy. Well, the same is true with giving. People who are already giving don't feel this, oh man, I always feel like I have to give. It's the people who know they're not giving enough who reject messages like this. That's the people who really have to start giving. But on the flip side of that, those are the people who are going to have that massive sense of, oh my gosh, what took me so long to start giving sort of feeling when they finally do.
And I think it's the same feeling, isn't it, when somebody starts a business saying, why did I spend 40 years in corporate America? I could have been doing this 20 years ago. What was I waiting for?
Yeah, every single time.
Wow.
Every single. I was just camping with a guy last weekend who I told 7 years ago, you need to start a business. And he fought me. Oh, no, I have a good job. There's no such thing as a good job. I have security. No such thing. He finally started his business. We're sitting around the campfire. He's camping for 9 days in a row. And he says, I could have never done this. And I said, are you glad you did it? He goes, I wish I would have done it 35 years ago.
Wow.
I've never met anybody who was like, oh man, I'm really disappointed I started a business. Just like I've never met anybody, man, I'm really sad I gave. And even if you're like, well, with the homeless guy, he might buy alcohol. Not on you. That's not on you. God wants you to give. What they do with the money is between them and God. You did your job. Now let God do the other one.
Indeed, that's right. I always tell, if I give to someone, I have an opportunity for a conversation with the person, I give it to them, but I hold on to it just for a second. I say, this is from God, not from me. He's watching what you do with it. So use it wisely. It's an amazing thing. I remember one story when you were talking about your books. There was a speaker who came to one of our Passover events, and he wanted to bring his new book and sell it. And it happened to be a high Sabbath when we were holding this Passover. And we said, oh, we forgot to tell you, you can't sell books on the high Sabbath. And he told me the story just a little while ago. And he says, he was really bummed. He didn't know what he was going to do because he spent $500 just getting the books there. And he said, well, I still want to get rid of them. I still want to distribute them. They've got my website on it. Maybe people will give to my ministry. Okay, well, whatever. So he announced on stage, I'm going to give away all my books. Go ahead in the lobby. They're there to give. I know we're not going to sell on Shabbat. Just take one. Lo and behold, one person comes by, says, I would like to buy your whole lot of books and pay double the price for them. Ever since that day, he does not sell his books anymore. He gives them away free online and gets more in donations as a result.
Yep, absolutely true. Do you have time for a personal story that way?
Please do. Go ahead.
So me and my wife travel and do a lot of speaking, and we were speaking at a conference where everybody was a pastor other than me and my wife. I was just there because I'm the financial believer. So we shut down our table for Shabbat. And this was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday event. And everybody's like, why are you doing that? You're going to lose so much money, because really everybody's there to sell their stuff, right? And we put right on the table, closed for Shabbat. And all these people were coming up asking us questions. And this is why faith and business are so importantly paired. They were asking us questions about, well, is this true? Or I thought that was done away with, which first leads to a great conversation about these things. But second, these people were saying, well, if this is true, why are none of these pastors doing it? I looked at them, I said, great question. Go ask them. So then it started getting to these other pastors. Hey, is Shabbat really done away with? We did the event the year after, and 2 other pastors started shutting down on Shabbat. But back to the point. So we only sold books for like a third of the day on Sunday, and we are the number one moneymaker at these events. There's just a reality to how this works, because when you're not after the money, that's when God knows he can trust in giving it to you.
Indeed. Josh, thank you so much for sharing with us today. This has been a pleasure. I've learned a lot, and I hope our audience has as well. Thank you very much. And thank you for watching Shabbat Night Live. This has been Scott Laird and Josh Tolley. I hope you've learned something today, as I have. And the importance of giving is something that we never want to forget. And we want to thank you for giving to Shabbat Night Live and to A Rood Awakening all year long. We really appreciate your support. We'll see you next week. Shavua Tov.